This is a video to help you be more creative in your photography. First looking at shutter speeds with animals and birds, and then looking at natural lighting with buildings and structures. One of the things you'll notice is that wildlife moves quite quickly, so you're going to need much faster shutter speeds. Now it's worth practicing this skill, certainly by starting with handheld and then moving on to panning and tracking. You will need to turn off the lens and body stabilisation. This won't actually help you, and sometimes it causes weird jumps as you track across, so make sure that's switched off. Because you're going to be using fast shutter speeds, you will need high ISO numbers, so start by setting it at 1600, 3200 or 6400. One thing you'll need to do when you're panning is to be moving at the same speed as your subject. Imagine there's a piece of string between you and it, and as you go around you're following it, keeping it in the centre frame as you go. This will give you a sharp subject, but blur the background. Before going out and photographing birds and animals and getting disappointed with the results, why not practice with cars and cyclists? It's much easier and you get as many goes as you like. Start with slower shutter speeds, a 40th or a 50th of a second. As you can see, this blurs the background, the wheels have got some blur, but the car is nice and sharp. This gives the image energy and makes it look like there's movement. As you come up to 125th to 160th of a second, the background and the wheels aren't quite so blurry. And finally, when you're at really fast shutter speeds, the car just looks like it's parked. Really practice this technique and find shutter speeds that you like using and you like the effect of. And then when you go to photograph birds and animals, you know what results you're going to get. One thing you'll notice with birds is they fly quite fast, and certainly they flap their wings very fast. You can choose to get that wing movement in your shot by using a slower shutter speed. This is why I say practice these skills so you know which shutter speed that you want to use. Before you even go outside, I would actually practice photographing birds in the garden. Build a hide, get some twigs or sticks so that it looks a bit more realistic. And you can hide behind here and you can photograph without the birds noticing you. And it gives you a chance to practice and observe their movements, and then go outside and walk around the fields and the woodland areas and see what they do there. All of this stuff does just take time and practice, so it's worth getting these skills right first before you move on. Don't be afraid to use high ISO numbers such as 3200 or 6400. Even garden birds will need something around 320th to 500th of a second. And birds that are flying from about 1000 easily up to 1600 or 2000th of a second, you'll be quite surprised how quickly they move. I'd recommend getting a lens with a focal range of around 100 to 400mm. This will get you close enough to most animals and certainly most birds. The small birds, it's just going to take more time and practice, and you'll just learn to pick your positions and timing, and then you'll get those close-up shots that you want. Because it's quite a long focal length, you will end up with quite a small depth of field, so push the aperture up to 5.6 or f8. That way you'll guarantee that your animal will be in focus still. When photographing buildings and structures, it doesn't have to be sunny, although this can help. It does put in shadows, highlights, reliefs and details, and generally makes the building look more 3D. Now there's no such thing as good or bad light, it's just light. It's either cloudy, it's soft, it's bright, it's sunny, it's just light. When you're backlighting a building, I prefer to hide the sun with the building and then go in and use a HDR in post. But I don't want to overdo this too much, so sometimes I might use a filter with it. If I was going to photograph a building, as a general rule, I would try to get the sun sort of behind and to the side of me, and with the building in front of me. And then as I take the shot, I know that I'm going to get that sort of side lighting. It's going to be about 45 degrees to the building. It's fine if it's round a bit more. What it does is just allow you to highlight all those little details that you see. If you look at the church, you can see that it's been lit on the side and all of the structure is standing out, and it gives it a bit of depth, much more three-dimensional. Finally, think about lens choice. Typically with buildings and landscapes we use a wide angle, and that's absolutely fine. You can get quite close to the building and distort it, getting converging verticals, stand back a bit more and get it in the scene. The other thing is put a telephoto on and look at the way that it compresses the landscape, and it will make the background go out of focus sometimes, but it just places it a little bit differently in the environment. So next time you go out, take a couple of different lenses with you and play around. Make sure that you come up with something new and different, and really think about how you can make that building look special, and just practice.